It's Wednesday, it's Uncovered. I'm Anthony Davis. He's Ron Filipkowski, as it says underneath, just in case we forget. And welcome to another episode of Uncovered, where we uncover the MAGA propaganda that is rarely touched by the corporate and mainstream media. So independent media is where it's at. You're at the Midas Touch Network. And Ron, we've got a lot to talk about. We said last week, and I think the week before too, that he's not even the president yet. And every single day there seems to be another drama, as there was during his first administration. Of course, we're talking about the disgraced former President-elect Donald Trump. Should we start with the breaking news, though, that he wants to put Kash Patel in to lead the FBI? Christopher Wray, who he also installed in his first administration, has announced today that he will be stepping down at the end of January.
Yeah, at the end of Biden's term. I saw some different reports on this. Some people thought it was effective today. It's not. So this is effective at the end of Biden's term. And I guess what he said is, Trump has already announced he's going to fire Wray with 3 years left in his 10-year term. But, the FBI director serves at the pleasure of the president. So the concept, the norm, is that they're supposed to serve for 10 years across multiple administrations. But, Trump doesn't observe any of those norms or any of those historical practices. So he already knew he's being fired. So I guess he just wanted to, sort of like Jack Smith, wanted to spare himself the pain of that getting fired and go out on his own terms. But this does sort of open the door, certainly, for an interim appointment of Kash Patel as soon as Trump gets into office. But he could have done that anyway, fired Wray immediately, which I assume he was going to do.
And I find it very interesting because I'm not a huge fan of Christopher Wray. I have to tell you, I personally think that he and Merrick Garland are responsible for not prosecuting Donald Trump much sooner for January 6th. Mm-hmm. And I have no doubt that they were like, look, it's probably better we don't because of, we don't want to create a constitutional crisis or something. And yet, he's a Republican, though, isn't he? I mean, he is
appointed by Trump.
Right. So what do you think he's thinking now? Because he's also a kind of career guy, isn't he? He's an institutionalist.
Yeah, it's funny. I see every day on right-wing media, MAGA media, constantly trashing people. Like yesterday, they were trashing Louis DeJoy, the Postmaster General. They're trashing Wray.
You mean Louis DeJoy?
Yeah.
Hands over the ears.
Mark Milley. Yeah. And I'm like, I have to remind these people, these are all Trump appointees. All of these people were appointed by Trump that you're saying are idiots and incompetent. I'm like, yeah, it just adds to the list of the 40 people that Trump appointed before that you already say are idiots, incompetent. Here's more of them that are still hanging around that Biden never got rid of. Now, Biden can't get rid of the Postmaster General, but he could have put his thumb on the scale if he wanted to and had the Democrats control the board of governors. They have a slight majority, but he chose not to get involved. And it's that's a lot of things. Like you just said with Garland, where Biden, Garland, whoever just didn't, they obeyed, they went along with the way things have always been without really realizing that they're dealing with a criminal organization here.
And it's a good choice of words, Ron, because it seems that these cabinet picks and these appointments, Jared Kushner's dad to be ambassador to France, today's news that Kimberly Guilfoyle will be the ambassador to Greece. This cabinet and these appointments are shaping up to be a criminal enterprise by the looks of it. I mean, everybody has form.
Yeah, we have 15 billionaires who, and it's funny because Trump will be on Wall Street tomorrow ringing the opening bell, and he's got all his billionaires in his cabinet on the economic side mostly. And then so you got those, then you got all the grifters and the people, his revenge people, the people that he wants to tear apart the government and to go after his enemies, your people like Patel and Bondi and Stephen Miller and all those. Then you got your other group, which is just your mega donor, grifter kind of people that, not grifter, but your mega donor people that he's trying to do favors for, or in the case of Guilfoyle, get her out of the country and get rid of her.
Right. Well, let's talk about the backstory to that, because we should remind people that Kimberly Guilfoyle was originally married to Gavin Newsom, who's governor of California. He said that she's changed unrecognizably and she's not the person that he married. She's not married to Donald Trump Jr., though, is she?
They've been engaged for like 4 years.
Right. But obviously they're together. Rumors were coming out that maybe they weren't together. She's a bit older than him, actually. I kind of looked this up earlier. I think she's 55 and he's 47 or something. So there's a bit of an age gap. Maybe he thought he was entitled
to she's a little older. I know that.
Yeah, to a younger model. But tell us how this has played out, because the news about her being ambassador to Greece is really the end of this little storyline, isn't it?
It is the end. And so about a month ago, I think it was Daily Mail got photos of him out on the town with this Palm Beach socialite woman, this sort of glamorous, I think she's like 33 years old woman. And I looked at her Instagram page, and it's like Alina Habaz's Instagram page, basically your favorite page. It's all just like glam, her in different outfits at different events. That's her whole page.
Champagne and perfection, the Florida people.
Correct. And oddly enough, always solo pictures. She never has her photo with anyone else. It's always just her, which is a little unusual. Like never any friends, boyfriends around, family. It's always just glam shots of her. That's Junior's new girlfriend. So they were photographed in a restaurant, sort of holding hands. Maybe somebody spotted him and clipped, that's not Kim, and sold it to Daily Mail. You know how it works, and so they published that, and Junior came, oh no, there's nothing to this, this is just, we're just friends, blah 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 blah. But clearly something was going on there, because then Daily Mail got some more photos of them going out on this past Saturday night, published those, and those were more like they were walking down the street holding hands. I mean, they were clearly dating.
So they're not hiding it at this point.
Yeah, it seemed like they weren't hiding it. And so those got published, and the next thing 12 hours later, Kim is getting named ambassador to Greece, which is like funny because you're just thinking like, what connection does she have to Greece? She has no connection to Greece. Zero. Her mom, I think, is Puerto Rican or Colombian or something, and she's Latin, and her dad is Irish. So I mean, she has no connection to Greece. So I could just picture the scene, where she's brought into the room, Junior, and Trump is there, and it's like she knows everything. And she had so much dirt on these people, right? Yeah. I mean, she knows all the stories about what goes on behind the scenes with these people.
Yeah.
So Trump's got to keep her quiet, because if she caught Junior cheating on her and she's pissed and she burns the whole house down, I mean, she can do a lot of damage. So you could see him like, what do you want? Where do you want to go? I mean,
pick a country.
What would be a country I want to spend the next 4? How about Greece? Greece sounds great. I'll go to Santorini. That'll be a nice consolation prize on this breakup. So that's what happened.
And Donald Trump Jr. posted on, I presume it was Truth Social, but certainly one of the networks. Yeah. He posts, "I am so proud of Kimberly. She loves America and she's always wanted to serve the country as an ambassador. She will be an amazing leader for America first."
This is what she always wanted. Right?
Yeah.
She always wanted to be sent off to Greece for the next 4 years. Right?
I mean,
and Trump is just like, well, Greece is a 16-hour flight or whatever it is. Like, it's like, that's far. I mean, it's not exactly halfway around the world, but it's close. So that'll work.
Yeah, she won't be able to get back in a hurry, put it that way.
He was probably hoping for a country that didn't have internet or something,
Well, the upside is that, there's quite a lot of Americans who are trying to leave the country at the moment before the new year. So I watched a YouTube video yesterday of a couple explaining the 15 countries that Americans can move to that offer some kind of, relocation support, and how much you need to invest and all that kind of stuff. I've heard this from a lot of people. I'm staying here, by the way. I'm very much, firmly rooted in the United States, despite what's coming.
Can you get asylum in another country if you're fleeing Trump? you're fleeing MAGA? Like, can you claim asylum for that?
Well, this has never been done, but depends which country you go to. I mean, if you were to go to Germany
Canada
or somewhere, you have to seek asylum in the first border nation, though. So you could probably seek asylum in Canada, and they would totally understand.
I think Canada would take me. They're a little mad at me this week because I've like criticized Trudeau a lot this week, but I only criticized him for not being tough enough on Trump, with Trump. That's all, But I think they might accept my asylum application.
It's worth mentioning at this point that Trump put out a Truth Social post the other day that I found to be completely abhorrent. And on this subject of Canada, you mentioned Trudeau after Trump insisted that there's going to be tariffs on Mexico, and Canada basically goes to war with our two biggest trading partners and border nations. So it's unprecedented for the leader of Canada to come to the personal home of a guy who's not even the president yet. All of that, I mean, that's just an aside. But the fact that he kind of showed up and promised that he would do better on the border, and then the next day, Donald Trump posts, "It was a pleasure to have dinner the other night with Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada. I look forward to seeing the governor again soon so that we may continue in our in-depth talks on tariffs and trade, the results of which will be truly spectacular for all." This is very interesting, Ron, because some people were saying, "Oh, this was a faux pas. He accidentally wrote that he was the governor rather." And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, no. This is an intentional authoritarian act to make out that Canada is just another state and Trudeau is just a governor. That is the hallmark of authoritarianism.
This is his third statement like this, so it's clearly not a mistake.
Yeah.
First, he gave an interview where he said, "Hey, maybe we should make Canada our 51st state."
That's right.
Right. And then he put out the Truth Social post showing him looking at mountains with the Canadian flag as if he was conquering them. Right.
Which turned out to be Switzerland.
Right.
Yeah.
By mistake, he posted mountains in Switzerland instead of Canada.
Yeah.
And then you have this one. And that's when I kind of lost it because, I was critical that Trudeau even went down there because I thought that was a big mistake and it showed weakness. Now, I've since been, I had a lot of Canadians push back on me on this, and I get it. They have a little bit of that little brother complex. I'm not trying to be like the ugly American, like I know everything and Canadians don't know anything. I know Trump and I know what works with him and what plays into his hands, and what Trudeau did was play into his hands. And contrast what he did with what the Mexican president did, right? The Mexican president told Trump to go to hell.
Yep.
She basically just said, "Screw you, buddy. You buy a lot of stuff from us. We buy a lot of stuff from you. We're very independent. You don't want to do this. You don't want to start this trade war. And you're complaining about drugs coming into your country. Well, we're complaining about guns coming into our country from your country." So, she just told him to go to hell. And Trudeau ran down to Mar-a-Lago. Now, what the Canadians say is, well, he didn't run down. You're being unfair. Well, that's the way Trump views it, is that he came down and kissed the ring, just like Joe Scarborough did. It's the same thing, just like Kevin McCarthy did after January 6th. When you go down there, he views that as you have surrendered to him. No matter whether you view it that way, that's the way he views it, is you have surrendered. It's a sign of weakness to him. And any schoolyard bully, when they sense weakness, they go in for the kill. And that's what he's doing. So you'll note that he continues to mock Canada and make fun of Trudeau. Has he said a word about the Mexican president since then? Not a word. So which approach worked? Telling Trump to go to hell or kissing the ring?
He's a coward, right? And so much of it is performative and playing the role of this mafia boss.
Yeah.
But deep inside, he's just a very broken child. And so, Sheinbaum did the right thing, undoubtedly. Trudeau, you would have thought that he learned by now how to work Trump and how to play Trump. But the fact that Trump would put out this post referring to him as a governor and as Canada as a state is so unprecedented. It is so bonkers. It is so offensive and dangerous. I just really feel like, the world is turning on its axis right now. It's going in the wrong direction. I feel like I'm in some Twilight Zone parallel universe.
Yeah, of course, no American president has ever done anything like that. And what the Canadians say, I can't believe this is their take.
Yeah.
But and they've sent me news articles from Canadian newspapers from like years ago that basically said like what they believe is that some Canadians believe that Trudeau handled Trump wrong last time by making fun of him, by being tough, by mocking him, and that he made an enemy of Trump. And the only reason why Trump is going after Trudeau now like this is because of the way Trudeau acted before. I don't view it that way at all, but a lot of Canadians do. So they felt like him going down there was trying to smooth things over with Trump and to say, let's forget all that stuff in the past and let's move forward, because their thinking is Trump is maybe saying all this stuff and threatening tariffs on Canada simply because of what happened in the past. Now,
which is
some of that may
likely
be an underlying theme, but that is not what's happening here.
The fact that any world leader has to treat Trump like a spoilt kid and really think like, how can I play this? Because obviously you have to have some strategy with international relations. But with Trump, it's so different because he's inhumane. He doesn't have any of the qualities of humanity. So they're having to, I'm sure they're consulting psychologists as to how to deal with this guy.
Well, the other theory that I've heard from Canadians is like, well, the book on Trump now from people around the world is the best way to get what you want from him is to praise him and to kiss the ring and tell him how great he is. And look, that works for like a congressman, that works for like Nancy Mace, but that doesn't work for a prime minister of another country to do that. What do you want to be, Viktor Orban? Is that who you want to be? Is that who Canada wants for a PM, like a Viktor Orban who kisses Trump's ass, or a Netanyahu? I don't. If I was a Canadian, that's not what I would want, And I like Trudeau, but I think from time to time he just doesn't understand how to deal with Trump.
Yeah, he's made some weird choices, I would say. Let's carry on with some of Trump's cabinet picks. Matt Gaetz, who fell out of favor as Attorney General, has now found himself a new job, and we predicted that he would end up as a host on a right-wing news network. I guessed Fox. Did you have a choice or a guess, or you were just going with anyone?
Oh, I knew it wasn't going to be Fox.
Okay.
What I had read a lot behind the scenes, like 2-3 years ago, when this whole ethics stuff first hit and the criminal investigation and all of that, and the case was pending, the word back then was that Gaetz was trying to get out of Congress 2 years ago because he knew how this was going to end. And he was trying to get a job with Fox, and Fox told him, absolutely not. That's never going to happen. So you also notice people don't pick up on these things unless they really study it over a long period of time. He rarely appears on Fox as a guest.
Right.
Rarely. Fox just doesn't really like Matt Gaetz that much for the higher ups, whoever. But Newsmax is where he is on a lot. And so the word back then was that he was really angling for a Newsmax job. And those jobs have come open. Like Eric Bolling, who was their 8 o'clock primetime host, left. He left Newsmax. I think they had a falling out. So there were openings there, but obviously they didn't want him either, because I think if they'd have offered him a primetime slot 2 years ago, he would have taken it and been gone. But they didn't want him either because he's too much of a liability. He says too many crazy things that are going to get them sued that they're probably worried about, and all the stuff about his background they're concerned about too. they have staffers and people that work there, women, young women. They don't necessarily trust him around them, and they don't want a sexual harassment lawsuit and the drug use and all of that. So, when his wife posts on what is Friday night, Saturday night, big news, big announcement coming out next week, I thought it was going to be like he was going to be co-hosting with Joe Rogan or something like a big podcast with Charlie Kirk that has millions of people, somebody that has a big contract who's going to bring him in. And then the announcement gets made and it was OAN. I was laughing so hard because OAN is like totally irrelevant. Like nobody watches OAN. They've been deplatformed from cable. They're basically an internet news show and not even very popular, not even popular on the right with MAGA. Like the right wing doesn't watch OAN. They watch 50 other channels before they're going to watch OAN. So it's just the fact that he goes over there as their new primetime 9 o'clock host is laughable that you go and they're trying to spin it like this is a great thing. It's like, this is not a great thing. This is literally the only job he could get.
Let's take a look at his announcement.
I could not be more excited to join the One America News family. The best reporting, the best analysis, and the most in-depth coverage of the Trump administration is going to come from our team. I've got the sources, I've got the insights, and there is such a spirit of optimism to unlock the opportunity of America. There's no place that's going to cover it better than One America News.
Yeah. I've very much of the opinion that so many of these Congress people and senators and people in Trump's orbit would have been better off, including Trump himself, just working in television first off, rather than in politics. If Trump had just stayed a reality TV host, he would have made plenty of money. He would have been much happier. We would have been much happier. The world and minorities would have been much happier. Immigrants would have been much happier. And it's the same with Marjorie Taylor Greene and any of these characters. They're perfect for kind of crappy TV shows. That's really should be their ceiling. But this hunger for power that gets them into politics, the power should have come just from working in TV and enjoying all of the trappings that go with that. But I really just see Matt Gaetz now as somebody who was only ever destined for that. And I reckon that One America is his gateway show. He'll do 3 or 4 months there. He'll have an argument with them. He'll be good at it because he's got character. And then one of the larger networks will pick him up.
I think that he always wanted to be in media more than he wanted to be in Congress. Yeah. I do. I think that not with OAN.
Right.
I think he wanted to be like a Fox host. That was always like I think there's a lot of people in Congress right now that's their goal. Anna Paulina Luna, Boebert, people like that. Their goal is to they would walk out of Congress tomorrow if they could get a job as a Fox host. And look, a part-time Fox guy, weekend guy is Secretary of Defense nominee right now, right? So Trump's hired over 20 former Fox or current or former Fox employees he's appointed. So if you want a job higher up in politics, that's it. So yeah, I think this is Gaetz's natural job, and I think that he does not want to be at OAN long term. I agree there, and the thing is, what you have to do, this is what he's going to have to figure out. What you have to do when you're at a place like that is you have to create viral clips for social media, and to do that, you can't do it on your own. In other words, him ranting and raving about something is not going to become a viral clip. He has to bring people on his show that are like members of Congress or senators and bait them into saying crazy shit. That's the key. When you're at a small channel like that, that's what you have to do. And I don't know that Gaetz is gonna be able to do that because Gaetz pretty much wants to do all the talking. He thinks that he's gonna be the star. When you're in a position like that, you have to pull things out of your guests that's gonna make news. In other words, that gets played on CNN, that where Gaetz needs his clips from OAN, from his show, to get played on CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS. And the only way he's going to do that, because they're not going to play him talking, is if he gets a guest to say something crazy if he does that, the show could get some traction. I just don't think that that's his plan.
Well, at least we are all safer with him out of Congress and in a TV studio somewhere. I certainly feel that.
Sure.
We should also remind people that Republicans voted to not release the kind of ins and outs of the investigation into his sex crimes. And how did that have a bearing on this, if any?
Yeah, well, it was we found out it was leaked. Who leaked some of the stuff was I forget her name, a female congressman from Pennsylvania, I think, is the one who leaked. Yes, it was. She was from Pennsylvania because she just lost her reelection.
Right.
So it would have probably been leaked. It might still end up being leaked. But you see why she leaked it. She lost her reelection on her way out, so she just started leaking stuff.
Yeah.
And he mentioned that he was happy that she lost her election after she did that to him.
Yeah.
I forget her name, but
well, maybe that'll be the big story that he presents on his new show, talking about his own sex trafficking crimes. You never know.
That's a huge mistake. He can't make the show about himself, and that's the weakness for a lot of these people is they do that. But look, he does have the connection. I'll give him that. He does have the connections. He could get somebody like a Kash Patel to go on OAN where maybe one of their other hosts can't, and he could maybe bait Kash Patel into saying some crazy shit. But I just don't know if he really understands that. But we'll see. I know this. I'm not going to clip Matt Gaetz and post Matt Gaetz talking.
Please,
I'm not going to do that.
Please do not. Yes,
I'm not doing that.
Keep us safe.
I will check in on his show if he has a guest that I'm looking for them to say something.
Yeah,
but I don't care what Matt Gaetz has to say.
No, I have no interest in him as a person at all. Pete Hegseth. Donald Trump is convinced that Pete Hegseth is going to get Senate approval. This is his pick to run the military, to be Secretary of Defense. There's a lot of stories floating around about his drinking. People haven't quite gone as far as to call it alcoholism, but that's they're starting to say because of early morning drinking that he clearly has a problem. He's been in meetings with senators at Capitol Hill. Let's have a quick look at this clip.
It was a very good meeting. The more you spend, I've known her for 10 years. The more we talk, we're reminded of, as two combat veterans, how dedicated we are to defense. She has been dedicated to make the Pentagon work for warfighters for a long time. We've had great, extensive conversations about that. Commitment to the process.
I'm sure he loves all the attention that goes with this, doesn't he? Another person who apparently wanted to be in politics years ago and ended up on Fox. It just seems to be this kind of bounce back and forth from right-wing news channels to politics. I mean, this is clearly the quality of candidates that we're going to see over the next few years. Do you think that, because I personally do, I do think that the senators are going to roll over for Donald Trump, and if he says, just get it done, they're going to have to try and get this done, despite Pete Hegseth having no experience and being entirely unqualified for the role.
Yeah, so if you just take the two people that have created some controversy here with respect to the Hegseth nomination these last few days, it really is eye-opening to look at the two scenarios in terms of how this stuff is going to play out.
Yeah.
Well, who he was talking about there was Joni Ernst, the Iowa senator, and he was leaving her office when that interview was happening.
Yeah, we couldn't quite hear what he was saying there, but he was saying that he'd known her for 10 years.
Saying we're both right. Combat veterans, and we connected on that level. Joni Ernst is a retired lieutenant colonel who was a combat veteran in Iraq and Afghanistan. And she was also a victim of sexual assault in the military. And so obviously the accusations against him are sexual assault, drinking, unstable, adulterous affairs, drinking on the job.
and paying off one of these women as well.
Yeah, and that gives her probably a little PTSD when she thinks about her situation. So she was very outspoken when he was nominated that she did not understand this nomination at all and didn't see how he could possibly lead the Department of Defense. And what happened was all the pressure, the whole MAGA machine was brought to bear on Joni. Elon Musk has been threatening her with bankrolling somebody to run against her. Charlie Kirk has done that.
Yeah.
Donald Trump Jr., all of the usual suspects have focused their guns on Joni Ernst. And look, here's what Ernst knows. Ernst knows that she will never lose re-election to a Democrat in Iowa for as long as she wants to be in the Senate. She will be there. The only way that she will not be there is this way, is if a MAGA Republican who has some popularity, who's backed by all these people, runs against her in her primary. So she's weighing these two things. She knows that Hegseth is unfit. She knows he's got all these things in his background that trigger her, that she can relate to. But at the same time, she wants to stay in the Senate and doesn't want any problems. If she just comes out and says, I'm going to vote for Hegseth, all of this gets turned off. All this pressure campaign, all the heat, all the phone calls, all the emails, all the hate goes away instantly, and she becomes a hero. So that's all she has to do. So you think about how easy that is to just say, you know what, I'm just going to let this go and get out of the spotlight here and turn the heat off. That's the easy path, right? The hard path is to do what's right for the country. And the question is, what is Joni Ernst going to choose? That we don't know.
It's so sad that so much time is spent trying to backroom deal the corruption of Donald Trump and his appointees. And that actually, Congress was designed for the people, governance, and it's supposed to be administrative, and there's a budget that needs to be approved, and they're talking about another continuing resolution there. And yet this is really where so much of their time is wasted. It's so frustrating because we're not even talking about the fact that Pete Hegseth has never run any organization before. He's never been in leadership. His brief period in the military and his interest in the military, because this is what Trump said, and we'll come to this a little bit later, but in his...
Well, he ran a charity and was forced out.
Right.
Because he was drinking on the job and hitting on female coworkers. Yeah.
Newsmax, there's a guy on Newsmax, Greg Kelly, who went a little bit rogue on this subject. Let's take a look at this clip.
Was on the Fox News channel. He would come and promote the Forever War. He would come as an Iraq War veteran and say what a great thing the Iraq War was and how we were there for all the right reasons. And yes, no weapons of mass destruction, but this war is going great. I disagreed with him. I disagreed with him strongly. I still disagree with him. But that's how Pete first made his name at Fox News, promoting the Iraq War. And I believe that he was doing it for political reasons, self-serving reasons. Pete, it was very apparent, and he talked about it, wanted to be a congressman, wanted to be a senator, wanted to be somebody important, okay? This is long before MAGA, long before any of that stuff. I told you, though, once the name came down, and I love President Trump, but he's not infallible. And from time to time, personnel mistakes will be made. And I am allowed to say what I think about these mistakes. So then the New York Times story comes out. We all know that the fake news is the fake news, right? So I won't rely on the fake news. I'll rely on what his own attorney has said, that Pete Hegseth signed a non-disclosure agreement and paid money to a woman who accuses him of sexual assault. I was once accused of sexual assault, falsely. I would never in a billion years pay that person a dime. Pete Hegseth, that doesn't sound like a fighter. That sounds like somebody who's blackmailable. And I'm not comfortable.
Yeah. Just explain who this guy is and why he's going rogue like this.
I mean, Greg Kelly is MAGA as MAGA gets. He loves Trump. His father was the New York City police commissioner, who was friends with Trump, right? He is the Newsmax primetime, one of the Newsmax primetime hosts. So he's a major player at Newsmax. I think he has the 7 to 8 time slot, which is a major time slot. Basically has like the Laura Ingraham time slot over at Newsmax. And for him to do this, to come out, and the interview was much longer than that, where he said a lot of bad things about his drinking and womanizing, and he talked about adultery. You know, he made a good point, which I hadn't really thought about, which is in the military, adultery is a much bigger deal than it is in the civilian world, and there's a reason for it. And he's absolutely, I've been so long since I've been in the military, I forgot, but he's absolutely right, is that military people deploy overseas for long periods of time, and we ask them to leave their spouses. And that's the hardest thing about retaining people, keeping people in the military, is it's hard to get people to stay in, because as they get older and have families and have kids, they don't want to go away from them for 6 months. But what makes that even worse is when your commanding officer is, hitting on your wife while you're deployed. Yeah. And that's why this stuff is, when people are getting caught being married in the military, sleeping around, it's a big, big deal. They get punished for it. Okay. So when you're talking about making someone when adultery is illegal in the military, it's a crime in the military, and you're putting someone who has admitted to doing that on all 3 of his wives multiple times, in charge of them and enforcing the rules on them, it's just so crazy that you would even consider putting this person in charge of the Department of Defense, who's so erratic and so dangerous. And so, Kelly made an incredible case, but the other interesting note about this is Trump went absolutely apeshit when he heard that. When he heard Kelly, his friend, his ally, saying all this stuff about Hegseth, Trump was pissed. And the reports are that he called Chris Ruddy, the CEO of Newsmax, and read him the riot act. Ruddy absolutely hyperventilated and panicked, because if Trump ever came out and said, stop watching Newsmax, they'd be screwed. And, he called all of the people, all the main staffers, the hosts, everything. He put out an edict that from this point forward, nobody at Newsmax is going to say anything negative about Hegseth. We're only going to praise him and talk about how great he is from this point forward. So this was a one-off that we got out of Greg Kelly. You will not hear a critical word about Hegseth from anybody at Newsmax. So it just shows you they don't have freedom to express their opinion.
No, of course not.
Yeah. What you just saw in that little clip is as much freedom as anyone at Newsmax will ever get to speak their mind.
And this goes back to the playbook of authoritarianism. And I'm going to keep using that word over the coming weeks and months, because a lot of people couldn't get their heads around when we were warning about Trump and a dictatorship, or Trump as a despot. This is how that stuff plays out.
That's right.
Right?
He's not going to go down and arrest Greg Kelly. He's going to do it this way.
Exactly. This is what pressure. I mean, this is what Putin does, but often the consequences are far more serious. Right. But
Trump has to just be a little more subtle about it, but the effect is the same, right?
Exactly. CNN didn't mince their words talking about the alcohol use. Let's take a look.
What I'm saying is, when you're talking about drinking at 10 in the morning, that's a drinking problem. Now, it doesn't mean that there should be a stigma.
Then there's a lot of politicians that have a drinking problem, Jake.
Yes, of course. But I guess my question is...
Yeah, and then there's probably a lot of media that has a drinking problem too. And now I don't drink. I haven't tasted alcohol in many years, and never have drank at all in my life, really. And so I really don't understand that. But there's a lot of alcohol that flows through Washington, D.C. on a regular basis, and I wouldn't say that people are alcoholics or they have a drinking problem because of that. I don't see it at all. I don't see that being a problem, and I really wish that the media would move on and start focusing on what he can bring to the Secretary of Defense, because.
I mean, the irony is he sounds completely drunk when he was answering that question.
Yeah, so the fact that a reporter somewhere might have a drinking problem means that we shouldn't care
Yeah.
if the Secretary of Defense has a drinking problem. I think it's a little different. The point is that when you go higher up the food chain on political appointees, and you're talking about Attorney General, Secretary of State, Department of Defense level appointees, these people need to have their shit together. They can't be blackmailable, as Greg Kelly said. They can't have all these skeletons. You can have one or two mistakes, screw up. Somebody can have a DUI or something in the past, or even have had an affair in the past. But that's not what we're talking about here.
No.
This guy has for years and years and years and years established a pattern where these things happen over and over and over again and present problems in his life and in his career. So to take all that baggage with you to one of the most important jobs on the planet, my quote to that clip, when that clip was put out, I captioned it as, okay, he has a drinking problem just like members of the media, but we don't give them the nuclear codes.
Yeah.
And the Secretary of Defense has the nuclear codes. So it's a little bit different.
The rest of the world is laughing at the United States right now. And, I spend a lot of time covering European and international politics. And the attitude is, there's kind of two sections to this. Half of them are terrified and panicking because of the way the kind of geopolitical storyline is going to play out, likely with Trump and NATO and goodness knows what. So from a safety and security perspective. And so they're moving battleships around and repositioning the military and training the military for who knows what, who knows, but just in case. But the other half are just laughing at the fact that Donald Trump cannot find, or chooses not to find, anybody with any experience to take on any of these cabinet positions, especially the senior ones. Kash Patel is a conspiracy theorist who, as we discussed last week, has embellished his resume to give the impression that he is far more senior than he is. It's jokes, and it is diminishing the value of America on the world stage. And Trump has no idea, because he just thinks that anything he says is gospel and is, people just think he's wonderful and he's convinced he has a mandate and all that stuff. He is so flawed and broken. But to surround himself with idiots, that is what this next administration is going to look like. Idiots and corrupt billionaires. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah, well, with respect to, the foreign policy implications, most of what you said in the first half of that, what MAGA would say, what right-wingers would say, is that that's a good thing, that they are happy that world leaders around the globe are freaking out. And
it's called destabilizing the world. That's what
they
it is.
think that that's a good thing, that if the whole world is afraid of an unpredictable Donald Trump and doesn't know what he's going to do from one day to the next, that's a positive thing, and that's a good thing, because they'll all be afraid of the United States and they'll do what we want them to do. That's their theory on foreign policies, that Trump will be a great foreign policy president because he's unstable. That's number one. And number two is, like, they don't really care, what the world thinks about Kash Patel, because Kash Patel is going in there to dismantle the FBI.
Yeah.
Just like the WWE Linda McMahon's going in to dismantle the Department of Education. So they don't really care what the rest of the world thinks. They just want these people to do what they're being tasked to do. The Linda McMahon case was interesting, because she was in the Capitol yesterday doing her interviews, and people were like, what do you think about the fact that you're being appointed to a job that Trump wants to abolish? And she just said, we're going to send everything back to the states, and that's going to make education great again. And it's like, so you're being brought in to dismantle the agency is basically it. Same thing that Patel is being tasked to do. So yeah, it really is. And Hegseth, basically what we're hearing about Hegseth is his plan is to go ahead and fire a whole bunch of the most senior generals and admirals in the military, and that's going to be one of the first things that he's going to do.
Imagine being in the military your whole life and giving service and sacrificing your private life, your family, your social life for the country, sustaining injury, PTSD, all of the other stuff that goes with this, and then having it all shat upon by this Fox News guy who's coming in to flex his muscles.
And who are they going to replace those generals and admirals with, that they get rid of? People like Michael Flynn, guys like that are just political ideologues that are loyal to Trump before they're loyal to the Constitution.
It's so dangerous for America. The reason that the American military has always been held up as one of the great militaries of the world with might and strength is because of its personnel. But this changes all of that.
The justification, I'll just tell you right now ahead of time what you're going to hear, is that these are woke generals.
Right.
That these are generals who believe in diversity and who tie the hands of the military to be able to do what they want to do and prosecute war criminals and things like that. And that's going to be the justification for firing a lot of these people. Like, 4-star Marine generals are woke, right? There weren't many woke generals when I was in, but apparently they're all over the place now.
Trump has been in France, hasn't he? He went to the reopening of Notre Dame, or Notre Dame, as you guys call it, and incorrectly. And there was a scene with him sitting adjacent to Jill Biden, and now he's kind of announced that he's got a fragrance product that's come out, and he's kind of used her image in that. This is a whole other thing. I don't want to get into that. But what I do want to get into is this whole strongman, this kind of fake strongman approach.
Yeah.
Because the way that he shook hands with Emmanuel Macron was so weird. I'll play the clip and then we'll talk about it. Let's take a look. Okay, so you can, there's no audio, so we can expose the fact that this is not normal. Right?
We can see he's yanking him towards him.
Yeah.
Right? And he even puts his arm behind him and kind of pulls him towards him a little bit. And look, he put more thought into that than he did about anything else on this trip. He didn't think about the history of the cathedral, the fire.
No. He probably didn't even know there was a fire.
He didn't care about any of that.
Yeah.
Right. He went there for that moment right there.
That was his fight
like his mugshot
photo. Yeah.
It's just like the mugshot or the fight. The mugshot thing, he practiced that pose in front of a mirror for hours, for days, his mugshot.
Blue steel.
And so this was something that he had planned, that he was going to go over there and he was going to show that I'm back, I'm in charge, you guys are all going to be beneath me again, just watch. And his plan was to go over there and who better? The French president, right? Yeah. Okay, everybody in America thinks the French are effeminate, soft people. So Macron has been anti-Trump to a large degree. And so I'm going to show them who's boss. And how's he going to do it? Not by anything he says, but this ridiculous, superficial, symbolic gesture. I'm going to yank his arm out of his socket, squeeze his hand to death, and show him. And you can even see Macron's face change. He smiles and then he goes, because Trump is trying to choke his circulation off right here. He's got the death grip on there. And because what does Trump know? That's for domestic consumption, right? That's for his base, because his base gets off on that kind of stuff. And they did. That clip went super viral on the right. Look at our tough, strong president manhandling wimpy little Macron. Look at how he shook his hand. That is they love this stuff, and he serves up and feeds it to them like Christmas dinner.
He is convinced that his job is to play the role of this strongman president. It's all a reality TV show to him. The appointments, all of these characters, it is, his only experience really is being on The Apprentice. And as Mark Burnett would describe, they just created this character, and he is continuing to play this character because he's not this person in private. He's quite slovenly in private, and just likes to snack and dip things in ketchup.
He's not a tough guy. Yeah, he's not
a tough
physically
guy.
Tough. He doesn't have physical courage or anything like
No.
that. No, he's never in his whole life.
Yeah.
Right. This is a persona. This is a character he's playing. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And you just saw him
who invited him to France? I mean, why did he even go to
Macron? Again, it's these guys trying to smooth things over, fresh start. They're treating him like a normal human being would treat another normal human being, right? They're trying to be like, okay, he's the president again. Here, we're reopening this historic cathedral. This is a good opportunity for us to kind of like fix things, smooth things over, the differences that we've had in the past. But again, they don't understand Trump. And Trump is not going there for that. But Trump is not interested in being their friend.
He's not a human being.
He's interested in dominating them in some way.
This is what people fail to understand. Treating him like a regular candidate, treating him like a regular president.
That's right. It's a mistake.
This has been the mistake by the media, by world leaders, underestimating his insanity and his abuse of power.
That's why I find myself saying, like, almost daily ad nauseum, like, you people don't understand this person.
Yeah.
And you don't understand how to deal with this person. And there's precious few people who do. There's a handful. I pointed out one the other day, Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff, for all his faults, I don't think Adam Schiff is perfect by any means, but Adam Schiff when I listen to him talk about Donald Trump, knowing Donald Trump like I do, I'm like, this guy understands Donald Trump and he understands how to deal with him.
But so does Kamala Harris.
Few others have, others have.
The way that Harris handled him in the debate was an example that she knew.
Correct.
How to play.
That is the right way to handle Donald Trump. Unfortunately, it was a small one opportunity that she had, and that was it.
Right, I know. On this very subject, let's talk about Morning Joe for a second, because there's been all this kind of backlash,
not knowing how to handle Trump, right?
Right. Of Joe and Mika going to Mar-a-Lago to kind of smooth things over after their criticism of him. And there's been a whole bunch of backtracking going on. And we have a quick clip here of them trying to rewrite the story. Here it is.
And let me say this. Two things. You can do two things at the same time. You can say he had fascist rhetoric and still go in and talk to him.
Yeah.
You know why I do that? To get the read of the man. You know why I went in and talked to Macron? To get the read of the man at a crucial time in EU funding and NATO funding. You know why I went to leaders in the Middle East who were angry at the United States, and I sat there and I listened to them attacking me personally for 45 minutes because of U.S. policy? You know why I do that? To get the read of the leader, to get the read of where the country's going. So I can come back here and talk to you and let you know what the hell is going on.
With context and
give you context, insight, and background. You know everybody we have on the show that's a reporter? It's what they do every day. They speak on background. Now listen.
I mean, why is he shouting?
He's so full of shit.
This guy is not doing himself any favors, is he, Ron?
Yeah, first of all, he's equating himself to a reporter. He's not.
Right. And also to a leader, a foreign leader.
Yeah, he's not a reporter that goes out and investigates something and does story. He's not a foreign leader either, right?
Right.
He is a commentator on a cable news show. So he's getting a little ahead of himself as far as like who he is here and what his role is. That's not his role. And you don't need to go to Mar-a-Lago and have a private meeting with Trump to do that job. Okay. You don't need to do that. Did Jonathan Swan did one of the best journalistic interviews of Trump ever. Did he hang out with Trump? Did he kiss the ring? No, he went in, he did the interview, and he left. And he did his job. You don't need to do this. So Scarborough's full of shit. What he's doing is he's trying to do damage control, because he went down there and he knew it was going to get out, so they disclosed it. And I don't think that they expected the reaction to be as strong as what it was. Their ratings cratered, and then what caused that little clip you just saw was David Frum. David Frum is a longtime respected columnist for The Atlantic.
Yeah.
I think he's a former or current Republican even.
He is, yeah. We had him on the weekend show a few times.
Yeah. So he's not like, left wing or anything.
Not at all.
And Frum was a guest on the show, and Frum actually, who follows me a long time, actually stole one of my lines. Okay, I'm going to just say he stole my tweet on the show, which started this whole controversy, which is I put out a tweet, and again, Frum follows me and retweets me all the time. I put out a tweet where I said, look, where I was talking about Hegseth's co-workers talking about he drinks too much. And I put out the tweet, I said, look, if people at Fox think you drink too much, you really drink too much, right? That was a joke I made. He said that the next day on Morning Joe, the exact line that I tweeted the day before. And they got mad. They kicked him off the show. Yeah. And then Mika, after the break, apologized to Fox and said, look, there's a lot of very nice people that work at Fox. They're good. We don't want our guests to demean them and insinuate that they have drinking problems. That's what I feel like I kind of started this a little bit, which is cool.
Well done.
But they kicked Frum off. So what did Frum do? He runs back to his office and he dashes off an article in The Atlantic explaining how he got kicked off the show. And he basically just said, they are clearly afraid of Trump and Fox. And I even made a little joke and they kicked me off the show. So what you just saw, that clip from Scarborough, is the next day him responding to Frum's article in The Atlantic. So it's like they're in a bunker mentality right now at Morning Joe, where they're just like batting down the hatches and trying to ride out the storm, but they're not making things any better.
And part of the problem is that they all have history with Trump. They all socialize with him. They're all friends with him. I mean, there was a clip going around of Mika hugging him and loving on him. And it's like, Trump's been around the media for years. And so have these people. And this is another reason why you don't want to put like TV people into senior positions in politics, because it's incestuous.
Let me talk about that, because I read a lot of the comments on social media. I can't reply to them because I just don't have time, but I read thousands of them. I know you do too.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that when this whole controversy happened, there was like a universal theme among Morning Joe viewers who left. And they all said the same thing, which alludes to what you just said. They said, look, for a long time, we didn't trust these people after 2016 because we thought they were friends with Trump. And it took years for them to gain our trust, to convince us that they really weren't buddy with Trump and that they had made a clean break from him. But this incident, that's it. This is the final, like that trust. They sucked us back in and then they betrayed us. I'm just telling you, that's the comments that I saw thousands of times.
Here's the rub, and I've tried over the last few weeks to expose how the kind of corporate mainstream media works, only because I've worked in it, previously to my new life here in the US and doing independent journalism. But a lot of it is fake. A lot of it is acting. And these hosts, their job is to act a certain way, to play along with the narrative, and it's not necessarily who they really are or what they really feel. And that's why independent journalism has now really taken hold and is where it's at, because it's real. We are ourselves. We talk to each other as ourselves, both on camera and off camera. But it isn't like that in this media world.
it's harder to fool people when you don't have all those barriers and buffers and producers
Exactly,
and stuff, right? Because we're very raw. It's like we're out there, like what you see is what you get, right? It's weak. Like I could sort of, let's say I could pretend to be something else or believe something else. I think I could only get away with that for like a few weeks before people would finally figure out like this guy's full of shit, right?
Yeah.
But I think you can probably get away with that a lot longer when you're doing like a network news show, right?
Oh, for decades, undoubtedly for decades. And it used to be the other way around. It used to be the case back in like Walter Cronkite era. And I'm not talking about him specifically, but it was so much more controlled and conservative back then. You really couldn't imagine the newscasters having a private life because they presented a very kind of robotic version of the news. And that was good in a way because it took all the emotion out of it. But we don't really have that so much anymore. And so now it really is a lot of this opinion chat and having these types of characters that got the job because of their connections rather than because they were any good. And I think that is a big part of this. Whereas for us and in the YouTube land and independent media, you only get views if you're actually good.
Right? or for their looks. I mean, that's
for their looks.
I noticed that too. Like you look at when CNN or MSNBC or Fox or whoever brings, this is our new contributor.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, this is a very good looking person.
Yeah.
And their resume is a little thin. And I, every time that happens, I think of like all these other people who have so much better, more expertise in this area, but they don't look as good on TV, right?
You and I, without, us two old bald bastards, we would not do very well in that.
We're not getting hired, right?
Right,
no, we're
exactly.
Not
but I mean, even people like Caitlin Collins, who's beautiful, really,
Right.
and she has this wonderful. She's very chic and stylish, and she has all of those things. But there is a lot of criticism of her actual journalism, and people are getting younger in that role. You need to be more mature. And so it's very interesting, isn't it, how the platforms have changed and the style and the fashion has changed in that world. Talking of which, let's talk about the interview that Donald Trump gave with Meet the Press with Kristen Welker. And I mean, I described it in my Blue Sky post as being a car crash, disaster, hot mess of an interview. And that wasn't just criticizing Donald Trump. It was criticizing everything about it. I mean, it was such a weird thing. But I did caveat my criticism with the fact that in order to get Donald Trump to actually stay for an interview and not to just get up and leave, you have to give him a few sugar lumps. And so she called him sir all the time. And he did all that, all the stuff that he likes to keep him in the room, because I fear that you do have to play him a little, but it didn't really go far enough. So we've got a few clips from this interview. Let's firstly look at the economy and talk about his position on tariffs.
We're subsidizing Canada to the tune of over $100 billion a year. We're subsidizing Mexico for almost $300 billion. We shouldn't be subsidizing. Why are we subsidizing these countries? If we're going to subsidize them, let them become a state. We're subsidizing Mexico, and we're subsidizing Canada, and we're subsidizing many countries all over the world.
I think he just likes the word subsidizing because it has more than 5 letters in it. But it's just not true.
It's complete fantasy. Either it shows again how dumb he is about how the world economy works and the domestic economy works, or he's just lying. I mean, it's always like
a bit of both, isn't it?
Yeah. We aren't subsidizing Canada. A subsidy is like U.S. tax dollars are going to them to help. Like when we subsidize Elon Musk, we do it with a $7,500 tax credit for people to buy his vehicle. That is a government subsidy of Tesla. It's money that the government is paying Tesla every time somebody buys one of their cars to make them, in theory, cheaper and more affordable, competing against gas cars. That's a subsidy. We aren't doing that. What he's talking about is the trade deficit.
Yeah.
He's talking about the fact that the United States, buys that much more dollars worth of stuff from Canada and Mexico than they buy from us. Why? Because the United States has, since the 1940s, always been a consumer of more foreign stuff than we export. Okay, except for like jets and certain things. But we've always been that way. We are a massive consumer market that likes international products much more so than other countries.
Right.
And we like to buy those things. And we buy a lot of raw materials, especially from Canada and agriculture. We buy a lot of food products from these countries. That's what he's talking about. It's just a normal trade deficit. Other countries have deficits with us, but we aren't subsidizing them. So what you're saying is the fact that we are buying a lot of their products because Americans like buying lumber from Canada.
And it's about $500 billion, by the way.
That we should make them a state. Right? Yeah. I'm not getting like the logic here, like, or why those countries should be punished because Americans like buying their stuff.
Again, we're trying to find logic in the insanity, aren't we? We are trying to normalize his use of language, but there is no reality to it. He is just saying anything. He doesn't know what he means. He's just trying to play the strongman. Again, it's the acting role. And he's just being xenophobic as well, being critical of countries that are not America.
Look, if another country is dumping, if say Canada subsidizes their maple syrup industry and gives a bunch of tax credits to their companies to make their syrup cheaper in the US, we should do something about that.
He couldn't promise,
but that's not what's happening.
Right. He couldn't promise that because she did ask him, the American consumers are going to pay for these tariffs. And here's the clip of him admitting that he couldn't promise that wouldn't be the case.
I want to delve into one of your signature promises on the campaign trail, which was to end inflation, to lower prices. You are now proposing tariffs against the United States' three biggest trading partners. Economists of all stripes say that ultimately consumers pay the price of tariffs.
I don't believe
Can
it.
you guarantee American families won't pay more?
I can't guarantee anything. I can't guarantee tomorrow. But I can say that if you look at just pre-COVID, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And I had a lot of tariffs on a lot of different countries, but in particular China. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars, and we had no inflation.
Yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And she wasn't able to push back, again, because she was worried that he would just cut and run.
The problem with a lot of these interviewers is they have all these questions, and she has a whole list of questions.
Yeah.
And she's trying to get through all the questions. But that's not really the way you should do an interview.
No.
The way you should do an interview is you stop. And when somebody's just going to lie like that, you have to call them on their lies and refuse to move to the next question until you pin them down. And that's what, for example, Brett Baer did, and that's what Jonathan Swan did. They did not move on to the next question. They kept following up until they got where they wanted to go and to get the truth and the facts. So, when Trump is saying, well, I had the greatest economy, he inherited a great economy. He cut taxes across the board. So he, freed up a lot more consumer capital and capital to corporations. And his tariffs caused havoc in the industries where he imposed them. But what he's hinting there is what I've heard some other senators say, which is, well, Trump is going to use these in a targeted way, meaning like he's not going to impose across the board tariffs on everything. Or if he does, he's going to carve out exceptions for his friends, exceptions for certain corporations or companies here or there that are his political donors. He's going to grant tariff waivers. So it's going to be the worst of both worlds. It's going to be a protectionist tariff that's going to cause the other country to retaliate against our companies. But then he's going to carve out for a handful of his billionaire friends special exceptions to those tariffs to give them a competitive advantage over other domestic companies. This is literally going to be like an organized crime gangster government where the wealthiest in America, and I'm a capitalist, I'm a former Republican, I'm no socialist, you know that, like, you know, but this is going to be a government for billionaires that is going to exist to make rich people richer. That's going to be the sole purpose.
He posted earlier that any billionaires who want to invest in America or set up business in America will be given the opportunity to, you know, he said, especially about environmental things, that you'll get all the approvals that you want really quickly.
Right. Mm-hmm.
He was basically offering a corrupted system up in a post. It's like he's not even trying to hide it because he doesn't think that this stuff is corrupt by nature of his lifelong corruption.
So let's say you manufacture mopeds. Let's just say, whatever, you're a domestic manufacturer of mopeds, right? And you're or bicycles or whatever.
Well, they did have this issue with Harley Davidson, of course, when he was the president.
Right. So I want to use like a smaller American company. Let's just say you manufacture like bicycles in a regional area, and you know a Chinese businessman wants to start selling his bicycles in Vermont or wherever it is, compete with what he's saying is, if you come in and you invest $1 billion or more into building your factory or your plant or even just your retail outfits, we'll waive all the regulations, all the environmental. So in other words, a foreign country can pollute, will not have to abide by any of the safety standards if they invest $1 billion, but the American companies will have to abide by those regulations. So it actually will put American companies at a competitive disadvantage with foreign companies. And how are you going to write this law, by the way?
Yeah.
How are you going to write this? You're going to say, what, any corporation abroad you must invest $1 billion and then all of these things get waived? No, it's not going to be written into a law. He's just going to do it behind the scenes with his appointed people in these aides. That's why he wants the career people out, the career non-political civil servants out, and he wants political hacks in to do stuff like this, because you aren't going to get career civil servants to waive environmental and safety regulations for a billionaire in China. But Donald Trump people will do that, provided that billionaire has also rented out Mar-a-Lago for the weekend for a banquet, you know, where he's paying Trump a few $100,000.
He's basically doing whatever he would have wanted done for him when he was in business. So anything that he came up against, like planning laws or environmental laws, that frustrated him,
overtime.
That prevented him, paying overtime, but prevented him from corrupting and making money, ripping people off. He's basically offering that up as the new policy for the United States.
And that's what he's saying. Come here. It's going to be like Havana.
Lawless. It's going to be lawless.
In 1953, right? From The Godfather, where they're talking, where like Hyman Roth in The Godfather was saying how great Cuba was because everything goes. As long as you can bribe the right people, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
That's basically what Trump is doing here. He's wants to turn the United States into Cuba from 1953.
But he's not trying to hide it. I mean, not talking about backdoor dealings and bungs. He's posting on Truth Social that he's posting it. He's telling us.
The crazy thing for me is like all of his MAGA fans are all like, for the most part, working class, blue collar people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's his base. And they all think this is great. I see him post this stuff.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh man, look at this. This is going to really, like Joe postal worker or some guy who's a mechanic is reading this going, this is our guy, man. This is the man.
Meanwhile, they're going to get shafted.
There is nothing in his agenda for them. Nothing. It's all going to end up hurting them, and they just don't see it coming. Because as long as Trump can distract them with like trans stuff and woke stuff and, this and that, or migrant crime, as long as he can feed them that stuff, they won't pay attention to the billionaires who are screwing them over.
And talking of billionaires, I mean, it's not just Elon Musk. We've now seen Mark Zuckerberg cozying up. We've now seen Jeff Bezos last week come out and say, I think the guy's got some really good ideas. I was like, these people, when they were poor, were pretty good people. Jeff Bezos started a book-selling company online, right? If you love books, you're a good person.
The China tariffs are going to affect Bezos more than anybody.
Yeah.
Because 90% of the stuff he sells is from China.
I almost can't imagine how crazy it's going to get. And the fact that Trump is talking the way he's talking and communicating with the world leaders the way he is, Mexico and Canada, but also Netanyahu, we've been talking about previously, behaving like he was always the president, that those 4 years of the Joe Biden administration didn't really exist. And we talked about a shadow government and how he plays the role of president. And to me, like, he shouldn't be allowed near any of this stuff until the 20th of January.
I couldn't agree more. And they're already saying, like, he's already the president. Look, this is what I see all the time, every day on right-wing media and social media. It's like, look, he's meeting with world leaders. He's doing this, he's doing that. He's getting invited here, invited there. They're like, he's basically already the president. And, they make a lot of good points because we don't see much from Biden. We don't see anything from Harris. And we do see Trump going around doing all this stuff. So,
well, Biden made a big economic speech yesterday, and it barely got any coverage. And he was solidifying his legacy. He was warning about Trump's tariffs and warning about the dangers of this isolationist policy making.
Everyone ignored it. Yeah,
and everyone
it was at the Brookings Institution. It was sort of recapping his economic tenure and his accomplishments, and you're right, it was largely ignored.
Let's go back to the Meet the Press interview and look at Trump on immigration and the failure of the interviewer to push back on some of Trump's lies.
So we had 11,000 and 13,000 different estimates, 13,099 murderers released into our country over the last 3 years. They're walking down the streets. They're walking next to you and your family, and they're very dangerous.
The 13,000 figure, I think, goes back about 40 years.
No, it doesn't. No, it's within the 3-year period. It's during the Biden term. No, that was a fiction that they put that out. This was done by the Border Patrol. It's 13,099, and it's during the Biden period of time. And these are murderers.
He's worked out that he can say anything and get away with it.
I mean, Kristen Welker should be fired right then and there.
Well, she should have been fired moving on from the previous interviews.
For moving on to the next question.
Yeah.
Because that's what she did.
Yeah.
And you don't move on to the next question when he makes a statement like that. I mean, that's a problem, is that Americans hear that and they go, oh, well, then it must be true. I mean, the number he's talking about, he said that the Biden, think of what he just said. The Biden administration released into the United States 13,000 immigrants who have committed murder, right? Okay. This is the reality. The reality is 13,000 migrants since Ronald Reagan, okay, have been arrested for manslaughter, homicide, secondary murder.
He's condensed
over the
40
last
years into 3 years.
And none of them are released into the United. These are people who have been arrested and sentenced to prison or the death penalty or life in prison. And most of them are still in prison. And you know what happens when they get to the end of their prison sentence? A detainer is put on them. They are not released from prison. So if one of these people gets a 20-year prison sentence, I know I represented a lot of these people. Okay. I prosecuted a lot of these people. They have a detainer hold put on them from ICE. They finish their 20-year prison sentence, and then they're deported. They never see the light of day in the United States. None of these people were released into the United States. None of them. He's talking about the ones who were prosecuted and convicted over during his administration, during Ronald Reagan's, during George W. Bush's. That's what he's talking about. And the fact that Kristen Welker can go on to the next question without saying what I just said.
Yeah, it's a dereliction of duty.
It's an absolute disgrace.
It's, she had a list of questions that was several pages long. And as you said earlier, she had a roadmap for the interview. But when you're dealing with a madman, he ain't sticking to the roadmap. The problem is
that list and he's happy because he knows that he can play this game. And she's got her next question that she needs to get.
Correct. And he also several times in that interview, because I've put out another video separately on 5 Minute News and also Midas Touch about, really deconstructing a lot of his language. But he does this thing throughout where he goes, that.
Yeah. That's
right. So he doubles and uses like a psychological trick.
Stop him every single time.
Right.
Every time he said, and you know this. I'm sorry, wait. I don't know that.
Yeah.
Don't tell me what I know. Right. I would. You're right. He does it 25 times in every interview. I would stop him every single time and say, please stop, Mr. President. I'd be respectful. Stop trying to tell me what I know. Okay, I'm asking you. This is what you know. Don't tell me what I know. But nobody stops him from doing that.
But again, this is a demonstration of his authoritarian tendencies and to maintain the narrative and control. And it's a tactic he's done his entire life. This is what he thinks a conversation is like. Can you imagine him sitting with us now and talking like we talk, where I shut up when you're talking, you shut up when I'm talking, and we give each other the space to have our views? This is a standard volley of conversation. He cannot communicate. He can only manipulate. And to watch it, I mean, he doesn't give interviews very often to the mainstream media. That one was a one-off. But I was just surprised as how little preparation she'd done.
How can any journalist have any self-respect when somebody can just tell a blatant lie and you sit there and it's a blatant lie and have the guy say, and you agree with me on this, and that journalist not say, no, I don't agree with you on that, or at least just say, if you don't want to say I don't agree with you, at least say, no, don't tell me what you think I think, because that's not what I believe. I mean, but he gets away with it. He just gets away with it time and time again. Nobody stops him.
She, in her mind, I presume she would think that because she did push back on the 13,099 number once, that she did her due diligence.
In a mealy-mouthed, wishy-washy way. She wasn't even firm. She was just like, well, you know what, maybe I think you might be wrong there. And maybe I think you might have that number a little off. It could maybe be this. And they said, oh, no, he's forceful. Oh, no. You're wrong. I'm right. This is the truth. And she goes, okay, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. Please continue lying.
It's also very hard with Donald Trump, with women. And I'm not saying that a man should have conducted this interview. I'm a feminist, as you know. But his view of women is so disrespectful that it is part of the way he's able to just trample all over her questions, because he has no respect for her whatsoever. Yep. It's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's but Kamala Harris showed that if you punch him in the mouth, doesn't matter if you're.
Well, she's a former prosecutor, so she
again. Unfortunately, she was only able to do it once, and then he refused to get back in the ring with her again.
Yeah. Kristen Welker then went on to talk about the family separation and the deportations, and Let's take a look at where that went.
Let me ask you about another group of people, the estimated 4 million families in America who have mixed immigration status. So I'm talking about parents who might be here illegally, but the kids are here legally. Your borders are
You're talking
Tom
about separation?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are two aspects to this. Your borders are, Tom Homan said, they can be deported together.
Correct.
Is that the plan?
Well, that way you keep well, I don't want to be breaking up families, so the only way you don't break up the family is you keep them together, and you have to send them all back.
Even kids who are here legally?
Well, what you're going to do if they want to stay with the father? Look, we have to have rules and regulations. You can always find something out like, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. I'll tell you what's going to be horrible. When we take a wonderful young woman who's with a criminal, and they show the woman, and she could stay by the law, but they show the woman being taken out, or they want her out, and your cameras are focused on her as she's crying, as she's being taken out of our country, and then the public turns against us. But we have to do our job. And
what is he even talking about? Again, he's just repositioning the conversation to where he wants it to be, and so that he has an out every time.
Yeah, I mean, what he's talking about is like a lot of our families, like yours, mine. My son is married to an immigrant. She has citizenship pending. So that's what he's talking about. He's saying that, if we deport her, he's an American, but if he
wants to go with,
he can go with her to Colombia. Same thing with your wife,
right.
Go back to the UK, if you don't, your kid's an American citizen. Well, born in the United States. Well, I don't want to separate your family, Anthony, but you're being deported. So why don't you take your kid with you and you'll all be happy? I mean, and he went further than that. He talked about doing away with birthright citizenship that's in the 14th Amendment, which is in the
Constitution. And this is the stuff.
This is the other annoying thing about right wingers is they will take a part of an amendment or the Constitution and they will hone in on that when the courts have already interpreted that for hundreds of years and said this is what that means. They'll say no, like Mike Lee was doing that. He was saying that no, if you read the 14th Amendment, there's this other clause that means that it's a subject to the laws of the United States, they're citizens. Right. And they want to interpret that phrase to mean something different than how the Supreme Court has interpreted it since 1867 when the amendment was passed, right? So that's what they do. They say, "Oh no, Trump's right." But the point is, Trump said this during the campaign. I put it out there a year ago that he said he was going to end birthright citizenship and deport people who are kids born in the United States. He's going to strip their citizenship and deport them. He said that on video. Nobody paid attention to it. He says it last week and everybody went crazy. And again, these things happen with me almost every day where I'm like, he's saying these things now and everybody freaks out. Holy shit. Did you hear what he just said? I'm like, he's been saying that for 2 years. Where you guys been? Now you're shocked? And the birthright citizenship thing he's been saying for 2 years. But
what he's
now
also,
everybody's like, oh shit, he really means it?
What he's also saying is that he wants to either ignore or rewrite the Constitution.
That's it.
And that is the big story.
The way he wants it interpreted. Not the way the Supreme Court has interpreted it.
But, this whole interpretation thing, I mean, did this start with the alternative facts line that Kellyanne Conway posted? A
lot of these things that were created and written 200 years ago were not written very clearly.
Right.
And they are subject to interpretation. Like, well-regulated militia, right to bear arms. We read that, it's like gobbledygook.
Yes.
And it's like someone has to decide what this means. What does the word speech means? Or free from unreasonable searches and seizures. What is unreasonable?
Yes.
Well, what is an unreasonable search? Well, the guys who wrote that didn't tell us. So it's up to the Supreme Court to decide what is an unreasonable search and seizure. And they decided that over hundreds of years. And that's why we go to law school and read all these cases. And what Trump is saying is none of that stuff matters. I don't think it really should means what the Supreme Court says. I think it should mean this. And that's what we're going to do.
And they also have their own interpretation of the Bible as well. And
Separation
we'll
of church and state, like
Right.
all that.
Right.
Think about that. Congress shall not establish any religion. Well, you can interpret that a million different ways.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court has interpreted it to mean separation of church and state.
Yeah.
But
Mike
many
Johnson has a
Republicans
very
are saying
different view.
The Supreme Court was wrong when they
Yeah.
said that. That's not really what it says, and that's not really what it means. So again, if this is how we play the game, which is, well, I don't care what the Supreme Court has said for the last 100 years, they're wrong, and we're just going to ignore that, then we have anarchy. We don't have a constitutional republic anymore.
I've said for a while that my biggest shock moving here was how lawless this nation was. And the only way that people get justice is by getting a good lawyer who is paid handsomely and by suing. But in terms of the structure of law and the way it's interpreted, it is so lawless. And we're going to see that with the next Trump administration, of how they can take advantage of the law even as it is written, with their own version of their own reality. And that's really my biggest fear. Listen, we have to finish. We're out of time. We could do this for hours, but maybe we'll do it next.
Ben and Brett are gonna kick us off. They're gonna pull the plug on this show.
They'll pull the plug. Yeah, I can hear it right now. So listen, Ron, thank you. If you want to download the audio podcast, you can do that later tonight, wherever you get your podcast. Don't forget to comment down below, share it as you always do, and we'll come back next Wednesday and do more Uncovered here on the Midas Touch Network. Thanks, Ron.
All right. See you next week, guys.